Hello. Welcome to another episode of the Great Work Launchpad. My name is Kris Nelson. My site is evolveconsciousness.org. And this is episode 20 of the Great Work Launchpad. Continuing exploration of shadow work. This is shadow work part 18. And we're continuing discussion on fear or love as what motivates us in life, or what can motivate us, or analyzing what does motivate us and seeing where it falls in to that categorization of fear or love. Which one are you being motivated by? Which one is driving your behavior? So that's what we're going to be taking a look more into once again. This is the Fear and Love part 3. Fear or Love part 3. And the Great Work Launchpad is an effort to get people launched into doing the great work. That's why there's a rocket ship, and we got the symbol made by Mark Passio about truth, love, and freedom. So you have to have the Agape care, which is what we're talking about here in this ongoing continuation talk about fear or love. And that drives you to truth, to try to figure out what's going on in the world, and then eventually, hopefully, that leads you to moral knowledge, moral truth, knowing the objective difference, the definitive objective difference between right and wrong behavior. And by knowing that, then you can consciously choose to go towards freedom, as opposed to thinking you're going towards freedom, thinking you're participating in creating freedom, but you're not actually, because you can't. You can't be doing it because you don't know how to do it. And you don't know how to do it because you don't know what creates that true freedom. And you don't know what creates it because you haven't figured it out, or it hasn't been explained. You haven't come across the content that can explain that. And thus, you're not able to do it. And the solution to it is moral knowledge and alignment to that knowledge, so that we can live in a world where people are not being immoral to each other and thus have true freedom. Hey Derek, how's it going?
Bonjour, Kris. How's it going? Yeah, it'd be lovely to live in a world where people really understand morality and would stop, fucking up other people's days and lives and all these things, right? So
Yeah, for sure.
What's up, Brandon?
And Brandon made it. Hey Brandon, how's it going? I guess he's still having some computer issues there. Seems like some jittery stream, some video, some lag. Well, if you can hear us, pop in when you're available, and that's that.
Yeah, he's in a different area in his place. His power is kind of cut off in a significant area of his house for the moment, unfortunately, which is why he doesn't have his 24/7 live stream, which is really cool idea, which is something other people can take up in regards to, hey, if you don't want to voice yours, show other people's and share other people's works. That's simple. It's that simple. What's up, Jerry? ¿Cómo estás, Mexico? Sorry, Kris.
Yeah, I hadn't added them yet, but yeah, you're seeing ahead of the game, seeing the people pop in before the viewers can.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right.
How you guys doing?
Hey, Jerry. All right, you?
Hey, Jerry.
Good, thank you. We
Oh,
are talking.
glad to see more people back. Yeah, so we're going to be continuing to talk about, a really important topic, fear or love, as what motivates us and what we're choosing as our underlying foundational motivational force, or this drive, this propensity that pushes us forward. And we've talked a lot about various aspects of it in the previous 2 episodes. So we're going to continue because there's a lot more to talk about it. And last week, Rick was in the chat and he asked if Brandon could give a breakdown of fear. So, Brandon, if you're up to it, you could do that, and if not, it's all good. But I was leaving that to you to open up. If you were here at the beginning, you can go for that.
All right. Just made it home in time. So, yeah, fear is just like immediate danger. You know, it's duress. You know, it's stress, it's anxiety, it's something in your environment is alerting you, something is putting you in a reactionary, basis. So there is an immediate threat, there is an immediate danger, which creates or, puts you in that stimulus, response. There is a stimulation in your environment. You take that information into your senses, and therefore it creates an unconscious, a response within yourself. And all this takes place, really fast. So that's why, usually when we are in this mindset of fear, it bypasses the conscious mind because it is usually an unconscious, reaction. And it's not always a negative, health experience. It's there for one's survival. It's there so one can protect themselves. Because if there is an immediate, danger, like within your, environment, or if there is an immediate danger, and your kids or your loved ones are in that, environment, it's going to create a reaction, within you. Because if there is an immediate threat, you're not going to have the time to consciously think about what you're going to do. So when we are talking, about fear, just look at it as immediate danger. Something in your environment is stimulating you, is causing you to react in an unconscious way.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, you talked a bit about that last episode too. So, I was going to get into one part, but I had sent myself an email thinking about something last week, I think. Just to mention to pop it in right here at the beginning, we can continue with it and see what everyone else has to add on it. Allegories about fear. And the 2 main ones that I can think of that are like really big on this aspect and the serving of the force of fear, despite maybe not necessarily experiencing fear like Brandon was initially describing it. You can have that experience of fear, or you can or you can serve the force, this propensity, this drive and motivation based in this mindset of fear, of entropy, chaos. And so 2 of the allegories that come to mind with highly serving the force of fear, not necessarily being in the experience of fear, this reactive state, is the Lord of the Rings and the being called Sauron, and obviously Star Wars with Darth Vader and the Sith Lord Palpatine. Since that one's all about, the dark side of the Force is about fear and anger and hatred and all these things. So Now, there is the new show, The Ring of Power, and some people might not like it, but that came out at the same time as the new, was the Game of Thrones one there, the Game of Dragons. I don't remember what it's called, the House of Dragons. I didn't really enjoy that. Like, I was like, Game of Thrones was all right. It's like I wasn't as hyped on it as everybody else, but House of Dragon, I was like, meh. I didn't even watch the second season because whatever. But the Ring of Power, I really enjoy because it deals more into this character Sauron and his origins as the great manipulator, and you get to see the development. Obviously, it's like we know he's gonna. It's all about creating the Ring of Power. The one ring to bind them. It's all about control, and he's got several quotes where he says things. In the second season, I might have said it in the first season, but he's talking about like breaking people's will or something like that, or controlling their will. So it's all about his goal is exactly what we're talking about here in the force of will and serving this force of fear and chaos and entropy, which ultimately is about evil and immorality, is because we're talking about upholding natural rights or violating them. And that's what Sauron's all about. He's all about manipulating people, making them afraid, which is a lot of part of what he does in the Ring of Power series. And he states his goal is he wants to put everyone's will under his will, which is the whole point of authority. And that's what all authority is about, is your will is subsumed to the will of the authority, whether it's one as a monarch or it's an oligarchy or whatever, a government. It doesn't matter. It's about there's certain person or people that are a cut above in the social hierarchy, where they get to decide what other people do, and they have other minions who listen to them, who will enforce their will and punish you if you don't go along with what they want you to do. And so that's what I wanted to first mention about Sauron, is this aspect where he's like, I really enjoyed those quotes. I didn't think of bringing them up. I was quickly looking at them, trying to find it right now, but he like specifically mentions like will and this idea of like breaking people's will or overriding their will, or having his will be followed by everyone, so subjugating them to his will. And I just wanted to bring up that allegory because it's really powerful for how the J.R.R. Tolkien, the ring and the whole allegory was about authority and statism, and that's what it's, he talked about it in, I guess, interviews and things or elsewhere, that it is about authority of the state and the power that it has. So I found that very fitting, related to fear, to mention this allegory of this force of fear that we're talking about, to give people more of an abstract or something they can relate to understand how someone to an extreme can serve the force of fear. So we have Lord of the Rings and Sauron, and of course Vader and Palpatine. I'm sure more people have seen Star Wars, or more fans of Star Wars than Lord of the Rings maybe. And now there's like 9 movies, so that one's all about, when they're trying to, the third, episode 3 is where you really see it, I think, most expressed, because it's all about this kid Anakin in the first movie, who had lots of potential and he was pretty innocent and a good kid. Then in the second one, he's like more trying to like exert more power and not listen to the wisdom of his mentors. and trying to do what he wants. And then in the third one, and he's afraid of some things. And then in the third one, you really see that fear where he's manipulated by the, again, the manipulator, the Sith Lord, by the fear of not being powerful enough and losing Padme, his lover. And so he's driven to try to protect her and become more powerful, and that's what he focuses on. He'll do immoral things, and he's listening to this evil guy, and he doesn't even see that he's evil because he's just focusing on himself selfishly. So this serving of fear ties into and serving entropy and chaos. That's what Satanism is. It's serving Satan, not as a literal being, but this opposer force, the shaitan, the opposer, the adversary. So it's all about yourself, because that's what Satanism is about: egotism and putting yourself as a god above, and it's all about you. And that's how Anakin falls and becomes Vader, because it's all about him and what he wants and what he cares about. So he's trying to save Padme, and he ends up being the one that kills her in the end because of this poisoned, demented drive for more power to try to protect someone and completely ignore the means by which he's obtaining that power and the negative pathway he's on. And then the result is the suffering where he loses what he was trying to achieve. And then instead of changing direction, he just goes full hardcore into it even more and just gives himself over even more. And like, oh yeah, and not realizing, the guy manipulated him and led him on this path. And if he wouldn't have listened to him, she'd still be alive. No, I'm just going to serve him some more and give myself over to that dark side even more. So yeah, what do you guys want to add something to that?
Yeah, of course. Mr. Palpatine, good old Palps, right? Giving people that heart palpitation with that electrification, if you will, sometimes in certain situations, right? But yeah, I remember distinctly, growing up, watching these movies, and that third film of the original, with Mark Hamilton, whatever, and with the Ewoks, the third finale of the original trilogy. The main scene that was one of the most important, I feel, was when Luke, Darth Vader, and Palpatine, or the Sith Lord, were in that room of this area of that spaceship, and Palpatine is just finally has Luke in his lair and trying to like seduce him, like, give in to the dark side, give in to your fear, give in to your hates, and all this stuff. And it's blatant evil seduction, obviously, but yeah, that kind of always left a mark. Like, who would want to who finds that attractive, and who finds, I mean, just look at this motherfucker's face, he's all like decrepit and stuff like that. And you see that in with the more, when Anakin is growing up, the movie series you're talking about, Kris, and Palpatine was just a regular senator, but then he got revealed or whatever, and then he just looked all deformed and this and that. And but Anakin just has this like hypnotized look at him, like, yeah, like, I'm gonna obey any fucking word you say. It's like, wow, like, really? So yeah, there's some, and that's literal, but we got to take these things allegorical, like you're talking about, Kris. And another movie that yeah, the Rings of Power, that's a great one as well. And I feel like it hinges off of like the fear of losing power, the fear of the unknown, and that kind of stuff. And it kind of makes me think as well of some of the manufactured fears that the social conditioners have put upon us, through like the fear of scarcity, the scarcity-based mind control and that kind of stuff. Like, there's not enough time, there's not enough money, there's not enough resources, and all this stuff, right? But also we kind of install fears within ourselves. Like, what about the fear of rejection and all these like psychological mind games that we have going on within our brain? But yeah. Another movie I'm gonna bring up, and then I'll pass it off to Brandon or Jerry. But Dune. I'm talking about the original movie or the more recent one. It doesn't matter. But the words of Frank Herbert still resonate in a timeless manner. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. And I like that quote because it's quite empowering. And we have a lot of thoughts going through our minds. Not all of them are our own. So we have to just let them pass. Kind of see where they go sometimes, and like, where was that trajectory from exactly? That kind of stuff, like who fucking threw that shit in my mind? That kind of, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of things to consider, but like the mind control, that is utmost importance. And we always take it back to the Hermetica, mentalism, first cosmological principle. So if we maintain the fortitude of our mental states, I think, all these aspects of fear are going to be challenged in regards to infiltrating our mental fortitude, I think. So, Brandon, what's good, man?
Howdy. Kris had brought up Star Wars and was talking about, Anakin and his love for Padme, which was rooted in Eros, the lowest form of love. And because he put that above, so true agape and true care, agape love, he and his ego had attached itself to the Eros, and therefore he couldn't see himself losing, Padme, which is what, had led him toward that dark side. And that's usually what we see, when we're talking about love and fear, is most people have the illusion of love. Most people think that they have experienced love, but they're just experiencing that lower form of Eros. And that's why, you see a lot of their relationships, they are about control, not wanting to let the other person go. Say this person is mine, I can't live without this person. Just like, how Anakin said, in the Star Wars trilogy. And another great movie, even though it bombed in the box office, and irregardless of what you think about Will Smith, he did a movie called After Earth with his son. And if you've seen that movie, like Earth is like a wasteland, and like all the life forms, they attack humans. And Will Smith and his son are like transporting some kind of species, and they end up crashing, and the species, it escapes. But the species can detect, sense, and it feeds off of fear. And that's what the whole movie is all about. Because Will Smith is this, it's this strong warrior character, this strong archetype character, who's fearless, like he's brave, he's cunning, he's the archetype, like warrior / male. But then the son is the opposite. So of course, like his son has to go on this hero's journey and face his fears, and ultimately, like at the end, he has to face this creature, and like ultimately he does. But of course, it's all just symbolic of, your own, shadow fears, your own, inner fears, your own, inner demons that seem to be, ruling most of us. But a great movie, it bombed at the box office. But this fear dynamic just seems to be the main drive in most people, sadly. And yeah, it's going to continue to be that way, unfortunately, until people develop true care and develop, true personal responsibility and take the truth in, for themselves. And just like Morpheus said in the second Matrix, we have to shed our fear. We have to let it go because the fear is nothing but a mere illusion. It's all the bullshit in our minds that we think about. He'll imagine being the initiate going through that initiation, and you have to go and spend a couple nights out in a dark cave. It seems easy, but the only thing that will hold you back is your mind, because in that dark cave, your mind will come up with all of these scenarios and all these fearful things, because that's what that darkness is all about. So you have to face that fear, just like the initiation will have to, that the individual going through that initiation will have to face his fears, being in that dark cave, alone all night. That's what the individual still has to do, has to conquer one's fear. And the fears are always going to be there. It's just about facing them in the correct way and learning how to deal with them and not run away from, not run away from them.
I can add on to that. So now that was fantastic, Brandon, what you mentioned. And yeah, what came up for me first was the Yoda quote where he says that fear leads to hate, and then hate leads to the dark side, something along those lines. Uh, I find some truth in that, you know. And yeah, this topic of fear has been on my mind lately because it's something I've been dealing with recently. It just happens like that, and I'm just kind of astounded that I can still feel like fear. Uh, so I was digging into this. Uh, what I came across was people fear change, they fear pain, amongst other things. But it's something to keep in mind. And I did a quick search on the Will Smith After Earth movie, and it says here, danger is real, fear is a choice. So I think that is true. Just like with the freedom, true freedom, that people fear that because the possibility of chaos. But if we can control our minds, we can essentially utilize our free will, as long as we're not causing harm to others, meaning basically enslaving others. And yeah, I think fear is, I'll even say, running the world, because like a lot of people are in fear, and that leads to slavery. And yeah, I mean, I love this topic, man. Love or fear. I think it's really important. So we have to learn, be proactive about learning about fear. And I was actually watching Richard Grove's with a presentation called "Fear is Optional," and I highly recommend it. He pulls out a lot of different sources and quotes. One quote was essentially, to have courage. That fear is, it's like we'll have it, and we overcome it with courage. So yeah, there's a lot of quotes in there, and yeah, I mean, another thing is put fear in the back seat. That's been said by somebody else before. Essentially, yeah, switch fear from being in the co-pilot and the seat, and move it, looking, outside of the window in the back seat, so you can be in control. And yeah, it's paralyzing. Fear is paralyzing. It activates the lizard part of our brain. Uh, you know, like the dark will do that. So, like Brandon said, we have to learn this, how to overcome it. I think, a lot of fears, we don't need the irrational ones, but ones like, okay, there's a bear out there, I gotta, that's a good fear so we can run away. So that's all.
Yeah, probably most of the time. It's not optional to experience it initially, the fear, but it's optional if you want to let it if you want to let it stay and not develop the courage and work on yourself to overcome it. Because, yeah, if there's gonna. Maybe Will Smith in that movie wouldn't have any fear if there was a bear show up or something, because he's totally conditioned himself to respond differently. But most of us are. If there's a fearful situation where it's not really optional, you're going to experience it, and then you can choose how you're going to respond to that. Thanks for all of your input, guys. That was good. Yeah, After Earth, that movie, I remember the quotes. It's like there's always like the trailers and the quotes, like, oh wow, this movie looks so good and whatever. And then I watched it and I don't even remember the movie. But thanks for reminding me of that. I'm gonna probably go watch it at some point, and I don't know, whenever I find the time, and watch that and see. Because you made some good points there, Brandon. Yeah. So the next part I want to talk about. So like last week we talked about reward and failure, not being led around by the rewards and not being averse to the failures, and there's going to be failures in this work, and talked about that quite a bit. And when we look at the world and the enslavers keep controlling us through fear, and yeah, so I'll stop it there for the review. I won't go into it too much. A lot of it wasn't in my notes because I only have like 4 lines here, but it was over an hour long show, so we talked about a lot of stuff that I don't have here. Next thing I want to talk about, going on from that, so one of the last things was the fear of responsibility. That was an important point. And the fear of the infinite potential of freedom and the chaos, and having to deal with that as individuals who are cooperating together, rather than someone deciding how everything's going to happen, how all responses are going to be handled, that it's going to be a certain class that does it, and then there's this another subclass over here that does the enforcement of the rules that they all make up. They don't follow natural law, they don't follow objective morality, they make up their own subjective morality, false morality based on their whims and their wants. And people don't want that responsibility. They don't want that responsibility to decide for themselves, and that extra work to think things through, and that extra work to cooperate and come to common ground with people and survive more optimally together with consent. They don't care about that consent part, that free will part. So they're going to say, well, I want to be a child, and I'll give off that responsibility to a certain group of people, and they can manage everything in society. And it's a lot easier because it's a few people deciding for everybody. Decisions get made quicker. Things can move forward quicker, and we don't have all that hassle to deal with. So we can be robbed and be in greater degrees of enslavement, but that's fine because it's just in a more easy and more comfortable life. So they prefer to have a life with government, and that is slavery. So the goal is to get out of that mindset, right? We got to get people out of this acceptance, this self-loathing, because it's essentially self-loathing and self-hatred, a lack of self-love and care about themselves, where they're going to accept to be at a certain degree of enslavement because it still has relative degrees of comfort, and it's less of a hassle. It's easier. And, in the biblical or extra biblical related text, there's this concept of the the wide path is easier and the narrow path is harder, but the narrow path is the path of truth, and the wide path is like all the other possibilities where you can just do whatever, and the path of truth is harder, it's more difficult. And so people don't want that path of moral truth because it comes with more responsibility and more effort. So they choose to remain in states of that, being driven by that force, that propensity of that entropic, chaotic fear, where the way they choose to live is promoting that entropy and that chaos in their lives through that enslavement. And we got to get people out of that. And that's the inner, like the lower level, great work, not the great work of ending evil, but the great work of working on yourself. So like a phase 1 is work on yourself, do that work on yourself, and then you can engage in the work of trying to end evil and immorality and enslavement overall. So you got to work on yourself, and that's the alchemical process. So we're trying to get people to go from that bronze state to silver, and then reaching alchemical gold. So you got to get to that alchemical gold to transmute, as we've been talking about often too. We've mentioned overcoming fear, transmuting the fear, powering through the fear. So it's transforming it into something with courage, that in spite of your fear, that you're going to not let it limit you. And that's what the fear we've been talking about mentioned it as well, that there's these limiting factors that limit you and limit your potential. So the work of remaking yourself as a phoenix in this alchemical gold to produce, to purify yourself and remake yourself into a more valuable individual, because our value is infinite and we're limiting our potential and we're limiting our value. So we've talked about that a lot in the previous episodes. So we have to be aware of what's going on. Well, being aware of what's going on isn't the end of the alchemical process. So people think they understand a bunch of things and they go through many spiritual works, a bunch of videos, and they're like, oh, I get what's going on, and yes, and like the fifth dimension and ascension this and all these other ideas and whatever, and they're like, oh, I'm so knowledgeable, and whether that's real or not isn't the issue. And then there's like people who are red pilled and, oh, I got the red pill and I know what's going on in the world, oh yeah, and okay, but none of that's creating true freedom. None of that is bringing a quote heaven on earth, which is the goal, metaphorically, symbolically. So they might have engaged in some self-transformative processes, worked on themselves in some degree, but they haven't reached the alchemical goal, the alchemical gold. So that gold state is where you're active, the actual gold state. And people can have this illusion of gold state. So what I'm saying is the actual alchemical gold is when you've worked on yourself enough that you're ready to do the outer work of doing the great work, which ultimately at the pinnacle is moral education. And as I mentioned, there's subsequent pathways that you can do and peripheral things that can lead people to eventually get that moral education. And there's different ways of creating media and content and different things. And the goal should always be to reach that pinnacle of having others become more, get an understanding and have a greater grasp and a firm grasp of what objective morality is by having a definitive knowledge of it. So the goal is when you're active in doing that great work. You're taking action to influence others for the world to change towards more morality. And the punchline is that you have to be teaching the dynamics of natural law and objective morality at some point. You got to get to that somewhere. You can't just be avoiding it and be like, I'm just going to talk about how consciousness works and learning how to think. And I know I did a lot of this in my work and didn't get down to objective morality. So this relates to me. I've talked about like aspects of natural law related to causality and these mechanisms and the trivium and everything, but I never really went like into the core, and obviously I'm doing that now in the past 2 years with my natural law presentation, going really deep into it. But so that's the punchline, is teaching the dynamics of natural law and objective morality. So you can do all the peripheral stuff and getting people to understand like how to even get there. So you got to know how to think. You have to know how to discern truth from falsity so that you can know how to discern right from wrong, because it's all based on truth and what is true. So you have to know if what someone's telling you about objective morality is actually what objective morality is, or it's just another belief, and then you're going to believe in something that isn't true about what objective morality is. So you have to learn how to think. So there's all these other things and peripherals, and understanding that the world isn't moral, and that there's these problems, and the world isn't the way it should be, and we can make a better world. So understanding that is also important. That's what I call the world of effects, that lead you to understanding that that's the who, what, where, when. And then there's like, well, okay, what are you going to do about it? Well, that's, why is that there, and how are you going to change it? And that's dealing with the causes. And that's the deeper great work, level 2, as I refer to it. So are you doing what you can with your will to do the great work? So in this work, the spiritual work, or whatever you want to call it, and self-improvement, are you at that point? Are you doing what you can with your will to do the great work in some capacity, starting somewhere, starting on basic stuff? You could help other people, or gain more confidence, gain more skills, take some courses, take how to be the true media course, other things. You got to start. Are you actually on that path? Are you pursuing objectives at whatever level to try to get to where you need to be to do more, and then to do more to get to the point where you're actually engaging in the information dissemination part, which is ultimately what needs to happen. Because if no one talks about natural law of objective morality, no one's going to have it. And true freedom is a literal impossibility, because then you can't be creating moral behavior if you don't know what morality is, and thus there won't be more moral behavior creating more potential freedom, and we'll just be stuck or going worse without actually knowing what the hell we're doing, or what our behavior represents, what type of behavior it is. So are you doing what you can with your will to do the great work, or are you making more excuses for why you're not doing it, for why you haven't started, for why you haven't done something, like take a course or offered to help someone who is doing it? And are you in the excuses category, or are you actually active in moving along step by step to more in that goal towards creating information for people to come across so that they can be edified by it? And this gold phase, like I mentioned, the great work level 1, the great work level 2, it's really about the level 2 part. So a lot of people create content, just do the level 1 part of talking about the effects. And like I said, that work has its place and it's useful. I'm sure none of us would be here without people having done that work, like Alex Jones or whoever, and pointing out the problems so that we're aware of it, and then it gets us mad, and then we're like, okay, well, what can we do about it? And then it might take us years to figure out, eventually get to Mark Passio's work or related stuff, and figure out, what the actual causal factor is, and the causal power that we can choose to enact as a solution. But that lower level, the point, it's not about pointing fingers at all the problems of immorality, like, oh, this is happening here, and did you see this today? As I call it, it's the flavor of the week immorality. Pick any day, pick any week, and this is what's easy content to make. And that's what a lot of people do, is just do the stuff about current events because it's easy, because all you have to do is talk about what's happening. And like I said, it has its place, but it's not the deeper level. It's not the alchemical gold level. So you're just going to point out what's happening, the immorality and evil in the world. Okay. But then you got to take it back to yourself, pointing at yourself and what you're doing about it, in being active and part of the root causal solution to those problems, because they're going to keep happening. Like I said, it's the flavor of the day, the flavor of the week. There's always some shit happening. There's always immorality going on. Authorities being authority. And there's always crap happening in that domain. And look at these assholes here and look at this shit. And it's ongoing. And if you just focus on that, which a lot of people are stuck in that cycle, that dead end, go nowhere hamster wheel. I guess it feeds into like dopamine and the novelty, always having new information, because that's what drives a lot of people. And you go through your doom scrolling and your feed on Facebook or YouTube or wherever the hell you go, on Twitter, and you're looking for new things. It's that dopamine, and that's why people, on top of it being easy, it also has more success in garnering an audience, because that's where people's mindset is. Even in this truth and freedom movement, that's where the mindset is in these more trivial aspects of the effects, this lower level of understanding that there are these things going on. And like I said, it's easier to do because you can always have content about it, because there's always shit happening. And the philosophical aspect, the higher level, is more difficult because it's more deep thinking and it's about eternal truths, so they don't change, and you're going to run out of content eventually because it's a limited amount of things to talk about in general, versus the plethora of the flavors of the day coming up, all the immorality and all the crap, and also just talking about that. Your job's already done for you. You don't even have to do heavy thinking, planning. It's like all you have to do is be able to consume information that's coming out, and then you're going to repeat that information. Like, look at this happened, and then maybe analyzing it a bit, and it's just staying at the effects. And maybe you could analyze it and relate it to natural law by specifically pointing out how this is a failure of what violation of natural law, and what the solution to it is, which is always going to be moral education. And the solution is not going to be vote harder or reform this or change this monetary system or whatever. Yeah, so I wanted to mention that, and I'll let you guys respond, and I'll continue after if you wanted to say anything.
Yeah, sure. I don't know, Brandon, I don't know if you had your finger on the dial, but I want to say something that might make you smile in regards to, punchlines. I liked yours, Kris. And like what you were talking about, like we have these, phrases and all this stuff. Yeah, and I got nothing against the red pill, Not a big fan of the blue pill, even though apparently the original screenwriter wanted and intended the blue pill, that is, in correspondence color-wise to like the third eye or throat chakra, if you will, to be the one that kind of helped awaken Neo. But all that aside, doesn't matter. Yeah, too many people are being black-pilled, or just having that manifest within themselves, and the doom scrolling, like you're saying. But people are missing the mark, not reaching for the gold pill, and doing that inner work, the self-mastery and all that stuff. But here's the catch, folks. It's not some kind of pill. It's no instant gratification sensation and whatever the hell. It's actually the philosopher's stone that you cultivate within your soul. And not a punchline to laugh about, but something to take into consideration and really take heed to what Kris is talking about. Like, we need deep thinkers, not this surface level fucking bullshit, because you can easily just pick up a rock and throw it at any headline, and wow, you're creating content. Big fucking deal. You're still just commentating on the effects and probably don't even know what the whole issue is about. Sometimes, you know what I mean? Like, people are so quick to like jump on any kind of story without letting the dust settle or kind of properly analyzing it themselves. They're just like, quick to just, because I need that dopamine hit, and I need the views, and I need the content to keep pumping out the sludge factory and whatever. Get out of here. She's more than whacked me. But yeah, Brennan, go for it.
There's a shit feel going around because everyone just likes eating shit. Kris had talked about the fear of, responsibility when it comes to having this knowledge. And I would say that's one of the main things that people unconsciously understand. And that's why a lot of them would rather choose to remain in that level of ignorance. Because once you have knowledge, then you can put yourself in a position to rightfully act upon that knowledge. Because you can still have knowledge, but if you don't act upon it, then what good is that actual knowledge? Where is the actual power? Where is the actual responsibility? And that's why a lot of people, unfortunately, still with their free will choice would rather remain ignorant, because deep down at an unconscious level, they realize the responsibility that comes along with these moral truths. And when you have the definitive knowledge of what is morally right and wrong in reality, then what greater knowledge could one possibly have? Because then what you actually have is one of the fundamental keys, one of the fundamental elements when it comes to building any relationship in any society. Because without that fundamental truth, there is no building of bridges. There is no communication with others. There is no construction. There is no building of anything in the form of relationships. And then two, in this fear mindset, people forget that one of the ways that we combat this fear is by truly consciously creating. And sadly, that's what a lot of people aren't doing. They're just sitting back, they're watching the fucking shit show, they're eating the shit, they're not getting involved in cleaning the shit up. They're just, they're just creating more unconscious shit, but you're not truly consciously creating. And that's why you see a lot of artists, you see a lot of people, in that dynamic, or, a lot of people who are involved in that craft, whether it be the music, her paintings, poetry. A lot of that stemmed out of some form of fear or traumatic like experience that they may have encountered. And by consciously creating, you are opening yourself up for new things to flow so you can actually heal yourself. And that's what we are trying to do in putting this information out, is we are consciously creating. We're doing this from a conscious, a mindset. We are formatting this stuff and trying to put it back out into, into the world so people can understand. So therefore they can take those same steps to, do their own shadow work and get to that level 2 part that Kris is, was talking about when it comes to combating the slave system by way of moral education. Because when you are in that mindset of truly conscious creation, then you are opening up yourself to that infinite, that opening so more information can flow through, so more awareness can flow through, so you can harmonize it a whole lot easier. And then two, it actually starts to balance one out, because we live in a predominantly, held left brain controlling, society. But when you start to consciously create, it changes things up. It switches things up more internally, so you can see the bigger picture and see a different perspective, see a different scope, and understand it's not just about you. It's not just about me. We are all in this together, as they say, but from a different perspective. Because if 51% are the majority of the people are still doing wrong actions, then that affects us all. That affects us all. Just as though if majority of the people are doing morally right actions, that also affects us all. And like Kris is always talking about, what would be the more optimal choice for a conscious, intelligent species? And like I said, with the, during the One Great Warrior chat yesterday, that's how you can truly tell that someone is truly intelligent. Is because they not only have the knowledge of morality, but they're choosing with their will, with their free will choice to create the most optimal conditions based off the knowledge that they actually, based off the knowledge that they actually have by way of right action, by way of getting activated, and not just, taking in that knowledge, but being responsible for the knowledge that they're taking in and also being responsible for what they consciously create and putting that information back out into the world with moral education, therefore to create those optimal conditions so that humanity can flourish. But if enough of us aren't doing that, the couple hundred people, who are talking about morality is is not going to do much when the shit show is running 24/7, when the diarrhea is being spread all over, the TikTok videos, it's all over Facebook, it's all over the television, it's all over, the sports, it's all over the political, hell, crap. It's just shit everywhere. And we need more individuals. We need more custodians, true custodians, who are willing to clean up not just the shit within their own, domain, but clean up the shit that's being spewed in our consciousness.
Yeah. Just to add on to that, I think about the image of the pool, and we either feed it good water or dirty water. So, as you said, Brandon, being conscious is the solution. Evolve consciousness, super important. Yeah, I mean, thought about, fear. I mean, fear of the unknown, like, oh, what's going to happen? It's like, do the thing. And like, we can't control the outcome. We can control our actions, and we can inspire others to put in the right action. So you just got to do it. And if enough people do this, then if the majority of us are moral, we will have freedom, true freedom. And touching back on the whole fear of chaos, we're already in chaos right now. The the human condition is slavery, and so yeah, just be a creator. I also thought of recent. I mean, yeah, I thought about how I think I was inspired by the sound path, and yeah, I just felt that music really is a good outlet to put truth out there. So I might be diving into that, and just to clear up space. As Brandon was saying, it's important to be performing at a high level. And also another thing that came up for me was I've been listening to this audiobook called The Obstacle is the Way. And I just think about the two paths we can, follow the nice path that's, immoral, or the path that is disastrous right now. But that's the moral way. And, I'm just going to say follow the moral way. That is the right way. And one last thing is, I've been, invited to the One Great Work Network. And something I've been thinking about is, man, I wish, I don't even want to say that. Um, I'll just say that I kind of regret not putting out moral content out there before. So, you know, take it from me, start now, take any action you can to make this world a moral place. So that's it.
Yeah, sure. And just to add on to the pills, like Matrix wise, remember what the Oracle said? Neo, when yeah, right. In the first film, he was hesitant, like, am I really the one? This and that. And she's like, being the one is kind of like being in love. You don't know it. It's just that feeling within you. And that's kind of what I was alluding to, in a sense of having to cultivate that alchemical gold within yourself. And yeah, there is that aspect of agape love that seems to grow in the same process. And so that is such a driving force as well, to really just hinge off of that, the love for life, love of creation and existence. It's something else. And yeah, like uh ending evil within oneself is an act of love, you know? So yeah, word up to End Evil Podcast also, by the way. But yeah, that fear of responsibility. Are you kidding me? I mean, like, wow, you don't want to take responsibility for your own life? Like, really? Like, what were you even born for? I mean, like, there's some basic fundamental questions people need to really sit down with some silent time and ask themselves, and then work from there. Everyone has their own trajectory and process and learning curves of these things, and yada yada. And I just bid everyone their best on their journey towards that positive trajectory. So voila. Thank you, Kris. Everyone else, Brandon, Jerry, and bravo. Congratulations, by the way, being on the network. Fuck yeah, it's high honor for sure.
Thank you, guys.
In closing, it's just saying the same thing. It's the repetition, trying to hammer in a point. I know Kris is good at it. Kris is good at this. Passio is extremely well at this, and it's all about morality, folks. I don't know how many times I can, keep saying it, and I'm going to keep saying it, because without this fundamental knowledge, there is no growth for humanity. There is no evolution for humanity. There is no freedom for humanity. It's only going to be more entropy, more chaos, more man-made suffering. And if you want to dive into the stuff, you can do it from a logical perspective, from Kris's work, from Pastor's work, or you can dive into the difference between syntropy and entropy. And if you may not like that, then you can look at it from the mythological aspect of Mayat and Ishvet. There are so many different ways for one to come to these understandings of, objective morality, the nature of reality, consciousness, truth, and the most optimal, or creating the most optimal conditions for mankind. So I'm looking at what avenue you go down. At the end, it's about having that knowledge and acting upon that knowledge and putting that knowledge back out into the world. And just like I explained how last week, how with the Kung Fu teacher and the Kung Fu student, the student would learn from the teacher, that after many years of learning, the teacher would release the student, say there's no more for you to learn. And that was because now the student had become the teacher, and now it was time for him to go back out into the world and spread what he has learned. That's exactly what we all should be doing, is learning from those great teachers of morality, of the nature of reality, of consciousness, coming to an understanding ourselves. Then once we have that fundamental knowledge, then we can put that knowledge back out into the world so that others can learn, and not just being a selfish bitch and just hoarding that knowledge and doing nothing and still eating shit. So stop eating shit, people. It's not healthy for you.
I guess I can give some closing statements that I 100% support what Brandon said. Morality is the answer, and stop choosing evil. That's it.
Hey Brandon, I know you're tired, but I'm gonna ask you a question. I'm gonna bust your balls. Why? So Maat has different names, and you choose to pronounce you choose to use the name Mayet, Mayet. Is that right? Instead of pronouncing it as Maat, Maat, Maat. So why do you choose that pronunciation, that name, instead of the more common one?
Um, I just say what Hamayat.
You always say like Mayet or yeah, it's about something like Mayet or something like that.
Well, I have a I have multiple speech impediments, so I struggle at like saying certain
Okay.
words, and because it's pronounced Maat, then um certain certain sounds I struggle with.
Okay.
So yeah, it's just a speech impediment, and like sometimes like first syllables are like when there's a double vowel, I'll pronounce them inaccurately sometimes. And they told me like how I would grow out of it, but hell I guess I never did. But yeah,
Okay. All right.
so yeah.
I thought you were specifically because and like there's different names for it, like in the 2014 or 2015. I have that image. Well, I had it in my morality one too with Ma'at and the different names, and there is one that's Mayet. So I thought you were always pronouncing it like that. You chose that name for some reason, and so Mayet,
No,
Mayet. No, okay,
no,
it's a totally different reason now. At
no,
least now
no,
I know
yeah, no,
why. All right, cool.
yeah, no, yeah, like yeah. I've always seen the name K-A-T. Yeah.
Ma'at,
And
yeah,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Not yet.
Because Derek does it too. Because he I
Yeah.
think he picked it up from you, and then he says Mayet too. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, well, I guess I got to find out why those guys are pronouncing it with this one name rather than the popular name. Is there something about it? I guess it's nothing
And
like
then
that.
too, hell, so I'm from the South. We got Ma, here, and then it's just at, or my at. It may sound like I'm saying my yet, but I'm really just saying my at. And
Cool. Well, I'm glad glad I finally got an explanation to that. That's a good way to end this episode. Thank you all for
Yeah.
being here. Appreciate you guys coming by, and yeah, come on by for next Wednesday. It'll be part 4 on fear or love, and as what motivates us. And there's probably going to be another one after that. I doubt I'll get through it all. Probably like 3 more to get through it all. And yeah, can have some more good conversations and trying to edify the dozen people that watch the videos. But it's we do it not because we're popular or we get a lot of views. We do it because it's the right thing to do, and we're trying to put our voice out there to join that chorus of truth and all those other people adding to that chorus, because that's what a symbolic way of interpreting the universe, putting our voice out into the universe, is that one verse, and one versare is the one change, but it's also a verse as in music. And so that one verse, that one song, and that's our chorus that we're trying to create, the one verse, to make it into a one verse, a one song, a chorus of resounding truth, that be part of that clarion call of that judgment card, and where that's going to lead, starting at the base of I think it was the macrocosmic tree, if I'm not mistaken, and where that's going to lead from that point of judgment, whether we're a part of that call, waking other people out of the dead, and where there are, other people have arisen from the dead themselves and then are engaging in that call and engaging in that chorus, that one voice, to put moral truth and engage in moral education. So I'll end it there, guys. Thank you once again. Hope you come by next week. And either way, have a good one. Take care. Peace.
Great to convert.